deadly ambush in Mexico. 3 women and 6 children were killed by members of a Mexican drug cartel on Monday.
The FBI is on the case of a missing Texas man they say bragged about stealing thousands of dollars from a Mexican cartel.
The dusty town of Galeana, Mexico, seemed worlds away from the turmoil of cartel violence until one tragic night in 2009. Benjamin LeBron, a community leader who dared to stand up against cartel kidnappings, paid the ultimate price. In a brutal retaliation, gunmen stormed his home and executed him in front of his family. The chilling message was clear: speak out against the cartels and you'll face a brutal end. Join us as we unveil the story of Americans who messed with the wrong cartel. Benjamin LeBron. When Benjamin LeBron decided to form an anti-crime group called SOS Chihuahua, aiming to combat rampant corruption, drug activities, and kidnapping, the local authorities were either complicit with or too afraid to stand up against the cartels. The news was met with mixed feelings. While some were happy that finally someone in the small community had decided to stand up against crime, the other group harbored the sense that this would be the beginning of a futile mission. While Benjamin's resilient voice became a beacon of hope for many, the cartel in the community was planning their next move against Benjamin. Before we continue, let's dig into what led Benjamin to this courageous assignment. Benjamin was both a farmer and a community leader. He held dual citizenship as an American and Mexican, a fact that would later draw international attention. Known for his integrity and dedication to his community, Benjamin's life took a harrowing turn in May 2009. On that fateful day, Benjamin's 16-year-old brother, Erik, was kidnapped by a notorious drug cartel. The captors demanded a $1 million ransom, a sum designed to break both the family and the community, but Benjamin chose a path that few would dare to take. Rather than give in, he became an outspoken critic of cartel violence and corruption. Instead of paying the ransom, he organized peaceful protests and urged his community not to cave into the cartel's demands. Remarkably, Erik was released unharmed after intense public pressure, a victory that emboldened Benjamin's activism. His heroics were to expose corruption and demand justice. Benjamin's stance and outspokenness gained widespread attention, but it also made him a marked man. The cartel's revenge was swift and brutal. On July 7, 2009, in the dead of night, armed men stormed Colonia LeBron. They forcibly dragged Benjamin and his brother-in-law, Luis Widmar, from their homes. What followed was a cold-blooded execution that shocked not only the community, but the entire country. The assassins shot both men dead in front of their families, sending a clear message to anyone who dared oppose cartel power. The killings were designed not just to silence Benjamin, but to intimidate anyone thinking of following in his footsteps. Enrique Kiki Kamara. Kiki possessed a dedication that only a few in the DEA will just dream of, one that would lead to countless dismantling of the drug operations. He was assigned to Guadalajara, Mexico, and his work primarily targeted the Guadalajara drug cartel, one of the most powerful drug cartels at that time. He aimed to infiltrate and bring down some of the most dangerous cartels. Armed with courage and tenacity, Kiki meticulously gathered intelligence and conducted surveillance, inching ever closer to exposing their operation. But before we continue, let's talk about his journey into law enforcement. It began with a stint in the Marine Corps, followed by work as a firefighter and police officer. But it was his role as a DEA agent that propelled him into one of the most risky assignments imaginable. It is not surprising that being in such a position and bringing several men to book will soon turn Kiki into a target for the cartel. February 7th, 1985, dawned like any other day. However, it would soon descend into terror. Kiki had no idea that he was walking straight into a trap set by those very shadows he sought to illuminate. As he left the U.S. consulate in Guadalajara, armed men awaited him. They ambushed and abducted him in broad daylight, as if mocking any semblance of law and order. These cartel operatives whisked Kiki away to a ranch owned by Rafael Caro Quintero, one of the top leaders of the Guadalajara cartel. For over 30 hours, Kiki endured unimaginable torture. His captors sought redress for his relentless pursuit of justice and information about what he knew regarding their operations. All their attempt to get Kiki to talk was futile. The agonizing ordeal ended with Kiki's brutal murder. His body was discovered wrapped in plastic sheeting, dumped on the roadside like discarded refuse. A gruesome demonstration of what happens when someone dares challenge cartel authority. This act wasn't just about silencing one man. It was an audacious statement from the cartels to anyone who dared oppose them, especially American agents operating on Mexican soil. The United States was outraged. Operation Leyenda was launched by DEA agents dedicated solely to finding those responsible for Kiki's murder. An unprecedented move, reflecting how gravely his loss impacted U.S.-Mexico relations. On Mexican soil, there were immediate repercussions too. Massive raids conducted by both American and Mexican authorities led to numerous arrests within weeks following Camarina's death. The tragedy also sparked policy changes aimed at better protecting agents working abroad while emphasizing international cooperation against cartels more than ever before. But what happened to the syndicates of this gruesome murder? Consequently, if there's a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone familiar with the Guadalajara cartel, it's Rafael Caro Quintero, known as one of the founding members of the Guadalajara cartel. His role in orchestrating some of the most brutal actions against law enforcement and rivals alike has placed him as a figure of disrepute. Rafael Caro Quintero didn't just stumble into power. He clawed his way up with calculated precision. Born in Sinaloa, Mexico, he quickly ascended through the ranks due to his keen business acumen and unyielding brutality. His ability to maneuver through treacherous waters, forming alliances, and eliminating threats made him indispensable to the cartel's operations. "People respect me for my work," Caro Quintero once said, exuding confidence that was as chilling as it was tangible. His influence extended far beyond drug trafficking. He was instrumental in expanding the cartel's operations into marijuana cultivation on an industrial scale, making millions in profit and earning an iron grip on Mexico's drug trade. The story takes a darker turn when we delve into how Rafael Caro Quintero masterminded DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena's abduction. Caro Quintero had grown weary of Camarena's relentless efforts to dismantle his operations. In February 1985, he acted decisively, ordering his men to kidnap Camarena while he left the U.S. consulate in Guadalajara when he least expected it. Camarena endured days of horrific torture under Caro Quintero's orders. The brutality inflicted upon him remains one of the darkest in DEA history. Caro Quintero intended to extract information, but also to instill fear among those who thought they could challenge him without consequence. Despite a massive manhunt following Camarena's murder, Rafael Caro Quintero managed to evade justice for years. He lived on the run, shielded by layers of corruption and loyalty purchased through fear and wealth. His ability to remain elusive became heroic. Caro Quintero eventually faced capture and imprisonment, yet, even behind bars, his name continued commanding respect and dread alike within cartel circles. It wasn't until much later that new developments would see him released under controversial circumstances, stirring fresh outrage among those who remembered Kiki Camarena's sacrifice. Erik Taddeo Ramirez. It was a seemingly ordinary night in Laredo, Texas, but for Erik Taddeo Ramirez, it would become a nightmare. Just 2 hours after arrogantly boasting about stealing $50,000 from the notorious Cartel de Noreste, Ramirez's life took a terrifying turn.
They say bragged about stealing thousands of dollars from a Mexican cartel and then disappeared just 2 hours later.
Ramirez, who was reportedly fearless and cocky, let slip his location during a phone call to an unknown woman, confident that being in the United States meant safety. He had no idea how dangerously mistaken he was. The circumstances preceding his abduction reveal a frightening scenario of the consequences of carelessness intersecting with the truth. On the midnight of March 24, 2023, Ramirez had a discussion that would determine his future. During the phone call, he boasted to a woman that he was in Laredo, away from any dangers. He was unaware that the cartel was already getting closer to him. The Cartel del Noreste, famous for its brutality, wasn't going to overlook such a bold move. Within a few hours, they had arrived at his front door. After midnight, a blue pickup truck arrived in Ramirez's neighborhood as the clock kept ticking. Masked individuals heavily armed and driven by lethal purpose, arrived at his residence like avengers in the dark. They burst through the door, pulled him from the house, and quickly drove away into the darkness. However, this was just the start. The cartel members had a more sinister plan. They were taking Ramirez back to their territory, Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. It was a place where their power was absolute, and Ramirez's chances of survival were slim. As they approached the border, Ramirez saw a fleeting chance. In a frantic, bloodied struggle, he tried to leap from the moving truck, but the men were too quick. Before he could escape, they yanked him back into the vehicle, ensuring he was fully under their control. Security cameras captured these haunting moments, showing the desperation and fear as Ramirez realized he was trapped. Hours later, Ramirez's girlfriend and sister reported him missing. They recounted how earlier that evening he had spoken about the stolen money and how he felt invincible because he was on American soil. His misplaced confidence had lulled him into a false sense of security, and now the family was left grappling with his disappearance. Authorities launched an investigation, but as of now, Ramirez remains missing, likely held captive by those he so carelessly taunted, or even dead. Robert Rosas. Imagine the sun setting over the rough hills of Southern California, painting the sky with hues of red and orange. For U.S. Border Patrol agent Robert Rosas, this July evening, 2009 was supposed to be just another day of duty near the Mexico border, a routine patrol to ensure the safety of his country. But fate had something darker in store for him. Born and raised in El Centro, California, Robert Rosas grew up with a strong sense of duty and an unwavering commitment to protect those around him. His dream to serve the country led him to the U.S. Border Patrol, where he became a respected agent stationed in Campo, California. Known for his professionalism and deep sense of responsibility, Rosas was a man who took his role seriously, especially in an area known for illegal crossings and cartel activities. On the fateful night of July 23, 2009, Rosas was on a mission to track a group of suspected illegal immigrants. The rugged terrain around Shockey Truck Trail was notorious for smuggling routes controlled by ruthless drug cartels. But what Rosas didn't know was that this was no ordinary group. Lurking in the shadows were cartel operatives who were heavily armed and had been monitoring his every move. As he followed the trail deeper into the mountainous wilderness, the cartel closed in on him. Little did he know that he was walking into a trap meticulously set by those determined to protect their illegal activities at any cost. Rosas approached what seemed like another isolated area, but as he drew closer, gunfire erupted from multiple directions. The attack was swift and merciless. Despite his best efforts, Rosas was outnumbered, outgunned, and caught completely off guard. The ambush ended with his tragic death, leaving him as one of the few Border Patrol agents to be killed in the line of duty, a reminder of the deadly risks faced by those standing against organized crime. The news of Robert Rosas' murder sent ripples of grief and anger through his community, fellow law enforcement officers, and across the nation. For his family, friends, and colleagues, it was a stark reminder of the constant dangers faced by Border Patrol agents. The increasing violence along the U.S.-Mexico border highlighted just how brazen and deadly these cartels had become. What followed was an intense manhunt. Authorities on both sides of the border joined forces, determined to bring those responsible to justice. Through relentless efforts, a suspect was captured, who provided crucial information, leading to further arrests. The captured members were part of a highly organized smuggling ring with ties to major cartels. Few arrests followed, but it still didn't suppress the activities of the drug syndicates along the borderline. David Castro. Imagine a dedicated truck driver in El Paso, Texas, whose life spiraled into darkness and danger after encountering a formidable Mexican drug cartel, ultimately resulting in his disappearance. David Castro's disappearance isn't simply a number in the extensive tally of casualties from Mexico's drug war. It represents a narrative of terror, hopelessness, and the ominous control of criminal organizations. David Castro was a regular guy, reliable, determined, and driven. He managed a small transportation company, mainly running routes between the US and Mexico. His job may not have been exciting, but it covered expenses and provided for his family. Castro's aspiration, on the other hand, would ultimately result in him going down a risky road. one where coming out unharmed was never a possibility. The starting point was when Castro unintentionally agreed to move a shipment connected to the Juarez cartel, one of Mexico's most brutal drug cartels. What he thought would be a normal task ended up being anything but abnormal. Concealed within the legitimate products he was carrying was a substantial amount of drugs, valuable to the cartel and worth millions. Once the shipment went missing, the possibility of avoiding the cartel's anger also vanished. Castro was not a genius criminal. People who were near him would argue that he didn't grasp the full extent of the situation he was in. However, the cartel didn't care about that. They believed Castro was to blame for the missing delivery and demanded a refund with no inquiries. Before he vanished, David started noticing odd occurrences, such as unfamiliar vehicles near his home and strangers inquiring about him. Initially, he dismissed it, believing it was simply a chance occurrence. However, the reality was much more malevolent. The cartel was getting closer, and time was running short. In late September 2002, David's anxiety escalated to severe paranoia. He was getting cryptic phone calls and threats that made it clear the cartel was done playing games. He tried to negotiate, to buy himself some time, but the cartel had no interest in listening. They had already made up their minds. David needed to pay one way or another. The last confirmed sighting of David Castro was in Juarez, Mexico. He had gone there, perhaps hoping to smooth things over, or maybe he was forced to cross the border. Either way, that night would be his last. Witnesses reported seeing him being forcibly taken by several men, dragged into an SUV, and driven away. The kidnapping was swift and brutal, a clear message to anyone else thinking of crossing the cartel. Federal agents and informants who later investigated the case believed that David was taken to a remote location where he was tortured and killed. His crime? Failing to deliver the money he owed, a sum tied to the lost drug shipment. Despite extensive searches and intelligence operations, no trace of his body was ever found. For David Castro's family, his disappearance is an agonizing mystery that remains unresolved. They cling to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he's still out there somewhere. But deep down, they know the truth. David is one of the countless victims of Mexico's relentless drug war. Now, it's time for today's subscriber pick. In the shadowy world of cartels, danger is just a wrong turn away. Mark Kilroy was an American student seeking a spring break filled with fun and adventure in Matamoros, Mexico. But what started as a night of excitement quickly spiraled into horror. In a cruel stroke of destiny, Mark was captured by a ruthless drug cartel that engaged in sinister ceremonies. His unfortunate demise, characterized by excruciating suffering, acts as a harrowing cautionary tale of the severe outcomes that can result from associating with the wrong individuals. But Mark isn't the only one. Many Americans have stumbled into the ruthless grasp of dangerous cartels. What happens when you mess with a force that thrives on fear and power? Let us know in the comments. Do you think avoiding such territories is enough? Or is it sheer luck that keeps people safe? Ronald James Wooden. Ronald James Wooden, an American craftsman, was brutally tortured by police in southern Mexico 3 years ago, following a dispute with a neighbor who claimed cartel ties. The 46-year-old had moved to Taxco, Mexico, with his wife to pursue the silver craft trade, but found himself entangled in corruption and violence. Wooden's neighbor, a former cop and alleged cartel member, demanded monthly payments from him. When Wooden refused and both men called the police, the situation spiraled. Officers arrested Wooden under false charges of disturbing the peace and then subjected him to a 4-hour beating. They tightened his handcuffs and stood on them, inflicting severe damage to his hands while taking turns brutalizing him. Wooden suffered nerve damage, broken ribs, and severe injuries to his genitals, leaving him on the brink of death. Wooden's wife, Carmen, relentlessly waited outside the police station, ultimately securing his release by paying a small fine. Wooden's condition was severe, requiring immediate medical attention, but the trauma went beyond physical injuries. His case was unique because, unlike thousands of other similar instances, it received some legal traction. The Guerrero State Human Rights Defense Commission exposed police misconduct, revealing that officers lied about Wooden's injuries and contradicted themselves during investigations. Despite this, justice remained elusive. For years, no one was held accountable, even though a directive was issued for the authorities to punish those responsible. However, in June 2016, a federal judge ordered a formal investigation into Wooden's case, marking a rare legal victory in a country where torture complaints often go unanswered. Taxco's picturesque charm masks a darker underbelly. Once known for its silver industry, the town has become a hotspot for drug cartel violence. In 2010, authorities discovered 55 bodies in an abandoned mine shaft near the city, a grim reminder of the control cartels exerts over the area. Wooden's tormentors, members of a notoriously corrupt police force, had deep ties with the Guerreros Unidos cartel, which was later implicated in the disappearance of 43 students in Iguala. Wooden believes his status as a foreigner, and his resilience kept him alive, even though his experience is hardly unique.
So, what happened to me has happened to others, and I'm a survivor.
What happened to me has happened to others, he reflects, acknowledging the systemic nature of police brutality in Mexico. The bloodstains he noticed on the jail cell floor weren't just his. They symbolized the countless unnamed victims lost to corruption and impunity. Mexico's history with police torture is long and deeply entrenched. Laws designed to prevent abuse have existed since the 1980s, yet the enforcement remains weak. Wooden's lawyer, Mario Santiago, views his client's case as a rare opportunity to demand accountability and push for structural reforms in Mexico's justice system. Barry Seal. Barry Seal's story is a rare occurrence, one commonly anticipated of a blockbuster movie, a narrative of ambition, crime, betrayal, and life that escalated into a precarious situation. Christened Adler Berryman Seal at birth on July 16, 1939, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Barry grew up with a passion for aviation. By the time he turned 16, he already held a student pilot certificate, and by 17, he was a licensed private pilot. He was often described by his instructor as a natural. Seal's skills and charisma set him up for a promising career. It will only take time before anyone knows that this gifted pilot will eventually become one of the most notorious drug smugglers in American history. Barry Seal's professional aviation career began in 1964 when he joined Trans World Airlines, TWA, as a flight engineer. He rose through the ranks in quick succession, and in little time he was promoted to the captain's seat, making him one of the youngest command pilots flying the Boeing 707 on international routes. This young pilot had the world at his feet, flying regularly across Western Europe and earning the respect of his colleagues. However, his career took a nosedive in 1972 when he was arrested for conspiring to smuggle plastic explosives into Mexico. Though the charges were eventually dropped due to falsified evidence, Seal's reputation was tarnished, and he was dismissed from TWA. This setback would be the first of many, pushing him toward a path that would eventually seal his fate. By 1976, Barry Seal had begun dabbling in smuggling small amounts of marijuana. You can believe that what started as a minor side hustle has escalated into full-blown drug trafficking. And by 1981, Seal was flying cocaine for the notorious Medellin cartel. At his peak, he reportedly earned as much as $500,000 per flight, a staggering amount that only fueled his dangerous ambitions. The money rolled in, and Seal expanded his operations, recruiting pilots and using a fleet of over a dozen aircraft. His method involved flying low and airdropping the drug packages in remote areas of Louisiana, where his team would retrieve them and deliver them to distributors in Florida. Nevertheless, as his business expanded, law enforcement also became more focused on it. To remain undetected, Seal moved his plane to the Mena Intermountain Regional Airport in Arkansas, a choice that later sparked numerous rumors and conspiracy theories. However, as per biographer and ex-FBI agent Del Hahn, Seal never utilized Mena as a primary location for transferring goods, despite the common belief. Still, his increased activity could not escape the attention of federal investigators, and by 1981, the DEA had Seal in their crosshairs. In April 1981, an undercover DEA operation known as Operation Screamer targeted Seal and other smuggling pilots. Seal was eventually indicted in March 1983 on multiple counts, including conspiracy to distribute drugs. Facing serious prison time, Seal attempted to negotiate deals with authorities in Florida and Louisiana, but they rejected his offers. Desperate and running out of options, Seal turned to the Vice President's Drug Task Force, led by then Vice President George Bush. The DEA saw potential in Seal, recognizing his deep connections with high-ranking cartel members, especially the Ochoa family. As an informant, Seal played a pivotal role in setting up key undercover operations that would later lead to significant cartel indictments in the United States. Seal went on a mission to Nicaragua, where he secretly snapped pictures of Pablo Escobar and other cartel bosses, loading cocaine onto his plane in one of the most famous operations. The Reagan administration utilized these photos as evidence linking the Sandinista government of Nicaragua with drug trafficking. The operation became widely known, exposing Seal as an informant and ultimately causing his death. The revelation of Seal's partnership with the DEA marked the conclusion of his value to both the officials and the cartel. After being exposed, the Medellin cartel quickly sought retribution. Barry Seal was fatally shot outside a halfway house run by the Salvation Army in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on February 19, 1987, by hitmen hired by the cartel. The attack took place during the day, serving as a dark indication that messing with the wrong cartel will not go unpunished. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.